So I'm just doing a little bit more painting on this house. There was a little piece that you saw before this where I did some of the foreground snow in a watercolor technique. I'm using fabric paint, but it's instead of an opaque paint, I was using more of a transparent paint and water. I don't like how bright the yellow came out here, but that's okay because since I am using some opaque paints in places, I'll come back to it later and just kind of lighten it up a little bit when I touch up some of the snow here and there. I was just working on this area of the house, adding some darker shadows to it. It still needs a little more work, the window and the door, some of the trees in the background. I know my hand is going to be in the way here, so I won't do too much. I'm using a long thin brush, I think it's called a rigger. Just trying to add some of the trees in the background. I'm not going to do too much today because I do still have to fill in a few other trees. But I thought I could do some of the ones in the background anyway, just to see how it's going to work. And it's not too bad, but it doesn't flow as well as I thought it might, like if you're doing it on a piece of watercolor paper. But that's okay. Just want to test it, try a few. And I think another time, I'm having a really hard time to get the angle of the camera in the right place for you to be able to see well enough. My problem is it's not the camera, and I have a very good tripod. That my problem is it's where my table is. It's a narrow table. It's part of one part is a leaf on my sewing machine, and it's not wide enough for me to actually stand the tripod up on top of it, which would be good because then you'd get to look down on it and see it. Or at least I haven't been able to do it. Maybe what I should do is get my husband in here and get him to have a look at it, and he might be able to fix it up for me so that you can see a little bit better. The problem is I did have it overhead, but the way I had it in the earlier part of this movie, I couldn't actually come in here and sit because the tripod legs are in the way. So I guess I'll have to try to do a little more maneuvering in the future just to see if I can get so that you can see it a little better when I work instead of just seeing it afterwards. So this is working quite well. Usually when I work though, I like to do a little bit and then I leave it for the day. I don't like to take it too far. I guess part of it is a confidence thing, I think. Because for one thing, I haven't done very much of this working on painting on fabric like this. I haven't done a lot of it. And so because of that, I kind of like to stop and leave it, for overnight or a couple of days so that I can look at it and just kind of decide what else I need to do. If it needs some more work in different places, if I need to change something. That's kind of the way I work. I have a lot of arthritis problems, And so when I work, I like to give my, my back or my hands or shoulders a rest for that day. I'll work for a little while and then I decide that I'm going to move on to something else that uses, you know, a different part, a different limb, or uses my hands in a different way. And sometimes if I'm tired, I will just go back to doing what I call some no-brainer sewing and work on some quilt blocks or something like that. So I'm just doing these. I'm looking at my picture, but I'm not following it perfectly. They're trees. So that gives me the idea, but there's a lot more to fill in. I still have more of the darker trees to fill in. But like I said, I like to give it a little bit of rest, and I can come in and pick up my brush anytime I feel like it and do a little bit. Doesn't all have to be done at once, for sure. But this gives me the idea. I've still got a few more trees, a little more color and to finish over there, and I need to bring in some of the bright yellows when I do it. But I think that's pretty good for today. Someday I'll get this camera thing figured out and see how I can work out all my angles and have a setup that you can see a little bit better, just to give you a little glimpse into my day. My room is very small, so it's hard for me to get set up so that you can get a good view. But I'll see, get my husband to come in and maybe he can help me out with the tripod and see what we can do. Anyway, I think that's about all that I'm going to do on the painting this afternoon, and I'm going to take a little break, probably put some tea on, and come back into my room and sit down. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I may work a little bit on the flying geese quilt that's behind me. I'm working on the very last row on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. There are 5 rows altogether. There's 4 rows on my wall. They're all put together horizontally at this point, and I'm halfway through the 5th row. So I often talk about my mood when I come in here into my studio and what I'm going to work on, and the fact that I move from project to project. I have a few different arthritis that I deal with on a daily basis, and so I'm often taking medication and sometimes sore in different places. So that's why I will work a little bit on one thing and then move to another, and just how I feel affects what I want to work on that day. So when I came in today, I really had the intention of setting up my sewing machine here for free motion quilting. This has been sitting here for a while. It's finished, except it's has the batting and the backing, and it's all set for some simple free motion quilting. I got in here, I even moved the chair over here, and then I switched and started working on my painting, which you saw earlier. And I didn't think I felt up to the painting. I didn't feel my concentration was good enough, but I wanted to see what a couple of colors on it were going to look like, so I decided to try it. And I did a little bit, and now I'm to the point where I won't set this up today. I'm going to go and make myself a cup of tea, and I'm going to sit down in my rocking chair over there and decide on what kind of handwork I might do from now until supper time. From my rocking chair in my studio, I finished doing some painting this afternoon and cutting out a binding for a little baby quilt, and This is just a little part of my sewing room. One machine covered over there with a project waiting for some stitching. And I got this back yesterday from the quilter. And I've cut the binding this morning. And you can't see it very well from here. It has a really pretty little dragonfly with the meandering, if you can make it out there. And since my idea for the quilt, it's a drunkard's path, but based on a pattern that I saw, I wanted it to look almost like a flowing river. So I think the dragonflies are a nice detail for it. So I decided it's about time for me to sit and have a little break. So I just thought I'd show you a few other little things that I'm working on. These are nighttime projects because I do some knitting in the daytime. Sometimes in the morning after I've gotten up and I'm having my tea, I might do a little bit. But usually it's nighttime. So this is the front, and I think I only have 1 or 2 more rows before I'm up to the neck. And I really love the little cable details that almost look like X's and O's in the front. I'm really enjoying doing this. I find it's quite easy. It's just a couple of cable 2 forward, cable 2 backs. That's the only stitches in it. And it's quite simple to follow. So I'm very happy with it. And the rest of the sweater is plain sleeves, plain back. So I think it will go okay. The sweater is called Little Rascal. And it's put out by I think the West Yorkshire Spinners. If anybody's interested, I'm not sure where I got it. I think I downloaded it from somewhere, but a free pattern. I'll see what I can do. So I've been working on that at night. And the other thing that I'm working on is a pair of socks. And they're quite pretty. It's a Croy yarn. So I started them and then I got about this far down to here and I realized they were going to be way too big. The name of the pattern is Crunkled, which I got from Ravelry. And the Croy, I did them already in a merino weight, sock yarn weight, and they turned out really, really nicely and they fit. But when I got these ones going, I think because the Croy it's a little bit thicker. It's supposed to be, a 4-ply sock yarn, but it really is a little bit thicker. It's very nice and soft, and I really love the gradation of the colors in this one. So I'm pretty happy about it. But anyway, I did have to rip it out. I got about this far with 64 stitches, and I ended up ripping it out and starting again. And there's 56 on this, 3 1/4 needles, and I think it's going to be just perfect. So that's what I'm doing at night. I have a book that I'm reading, which I will post a picture of, and it's called Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce, and I've just started it. I finished the one called The Salt Path, which I also really, really enjoyed. It's a true memoir about a couple that, and no spoiler alert here, it tells you this on the back. They lose their home and they start on this, ends up being a 600 and some mile walk in England and Wales and that area. Anyway, I don't know a lot about it, but it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it so much that I had to go and look up a little bit about their history and what happens to the couple afterwards. And she's written another book and she's working on a third one. So I'm very anxious to read her new books. So that's about all I'm doing. I cut binding for the baby quilt. I will put a picture in here. And so I just have to put the binding together and get it sewn on, which I won't do today. I'm hoping I'll do it tomorrow. And this morning I started I started a soup. Actually, it's sitting out there in the crock pot on low right now. And it's a beef barley soup. I found it online, the recipe. It's a Martha Stewart recipe if anyone's interested. And the only thing that I did different, everybody laughs at me when I say these things, but I always have to change my recipes a little bit, just depending on what I like and herbs and what I have in the house. So I did pretty much follow the recipe exactly, except I really like a beef barley with a little bit of tomato in it. So I did come across another recipe. Well, one had a can of tomatoes and another one had tomato paste, a little bit of tomato paste. So I put about a half of a small can of tomato paste in it, and I think it seems really good. I've tasted it. So that's our supper tonight. So that's all ready. So now I can just take the rest of the afternoon off and do what I like. Actually, one thing that I've been doing is, I'll see if I can hold this up. This is a black fabric that I've had for quite a while, and I'm thinking of using it as a background. I know I don't go for plain backgrounds very often. I'm kind of colorful. So I just finished a quilt that was blues and greens, so for a boy. So I picked out some pinks and blues, and there's a few greens in there. And I'm hoping to put this in it as a constant, as kind of a background. I'll see if I can take a little bit better picture of the fabrics after, and I'll put it in here. And I won't start that. It's going to be 5-inch blocks, so but they're offset. So I really liked it. It's very interesting looking, and the pattern came from Pinterest, but I'm not sure what the name of it is. I'll look for it once I get a little bit further, but I haven't started cutting anything out yet, and I think I'll wait a little bit until I get the binding sewn on the baby quilt. And once that's sewn on, and then it's just handwork. And the other thing I'm doing is just working on the last row of putting these blocks together for the flying geese. And once the last row is done, then I can put the rows together. And I think I'm probably going to put a border around it too. So that's going to take me a little bit too. But I always really enjoy sort of pulling fabrics out of my stash and looking at possibilities of colors and what I might do next. And I also like to keep baby quilts in the house. And this one that I just did with the Drunkard's Path, it's going to be on its way out soon, as soon as it's finished. And so I don't have any other baby quilts ready. So I think what I will do, that's what I like to kind of keep ahead of them. So that's why I'm planning another one to start. Anyway, that's about what I'm up to today. And if you have any questions, you can send me a message, and or I think you can put it in the comments below. And I think I'll try to add a picture in of more of my fabric, the fabric colors that I chose, so that you can see it a little more clearly and see what you think.